Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace here on Thanksgiving Eve. We are brought to you by our friends over at Deace Medical. It seems as if the spirit of the age is trying to make sure that it launches World War III before Trump takes office here. We've got Joe Biden authorizing Ukraine to use missiles equipped from the United States to strike inside of Russia's border. We've got North Korean troops positioned along the Ukrainian border on behalf of Russia. It's just another reminder that in any given moment, in any given situation, that could never happen here, or that could never happen in this day and age, happens. We have lived through how many of such moments in recent years. That's why you want to get a hold of our friends over at Deace Medical right now. The Deace case is a personalized emergency kit that contains essential antibiotics and medications that treat most of the common and deadly bacterial infections. It provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. Just fill out a simple form online and you'll have it in case you need it. And there are add-on options too if you want to be able to customize that. Things that are practical, like EpiPens. Things that are banned yet heroic, like ivermectin. All right. So Deace just launched, in fact, an all-new compounded version of ivermectin for only $30 as an add-on to the Deace case. So go to Deace.com right now, JASE for Deace.com. Enter the code Deace at checkout for a discount on your order. That's promo code Deace for a discount on your order at Jace.com. JASE, Jace.com. All right, coming up on today's show, we will start buy, sell, or hold here at the bottom of the hour. We'll get through as many of those as we possibly can. And the ones that remain, we'll get to in the overtime today for Blaze TV subscribers. Also, our good friend and the prophet of woe and lamentation, we have to get rabbit punched before we break for a long holiday weekend. It just makes you feel alive. And so Daniel Horowitz will join us here to close out the program later today. But before we get to all of that, let's begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by perhaps Trump's best appointment yet. Last night, Donald Trump announced his pick to lead the National Institutes of Health. The NIH, as you're aware, was headed up by that snake, Dr. Francis Collins, during the pandemic. One of the first serious academics to push back against the onslaught of novel non-pharmaceutical interventions like lockdowns, masks, and school closures. And I mean one of the first 3 or 4 serious academic people was Stanford's Dr. Bhattacharya. And now he's Trump's pick to lead the massive National Institutes of Health. In many ways, this is vindication for the ragtag cadre on Team Sanity during the pandemic, as one of their own has been put in a position of power within the federal government. Trump, during his announcement memo, singled out Dr. Bhattacharya's signing on to the Great Barrington Declaration, which was a document signed by various academics around the world, publicly criticizing lockdowns and masking as attempts to control COVID-19. You'll recall it was about that Great Barrington Declaration, which then NIH Director Francis Collins emailed Dr. Fauci about, saying the declaration needed a, quote, quick and devastating takedown. Now, that sound you hear is the scurrying of thousands of public health bureaucrat cockroaches like Francis Collins. Moving on, there was a bit of a bloodletting or post-mortem of sorts about the Kamala campaign yesterday. First, the Huffington Post reported, based on talks with senior advisors with that campaign, that their internal polling never had Kamala ahead of Trump at any point in the race, which in and of itself is another reason to ban public polling, as you see here. Kamala herself came out with a video last night for her more dejected followers.
I'm sober enough to know what I'm doing, and I'm drunk enough to really enjoy doing it.
Whoops, wrong clip.
I just have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you. You have the same power that you did before November 5th. And you have the same purpose that you did. And you have the same ability to engage and inspire. So don't ever let anybody or any circumstance take your power from you.
The votes are now pretty much all counted, and for the first time since 1980, every state in the union has shifted red. Nevertheless, actress Sharon Stone says Kamala lost because Americans are a bunch of backwards, arrogant, Luddite shut-ins.
You know, Italy has seen fascism. Italy has seen these things. You guys, you understand what happens. You have seen this before. My country is in its adolescence. Adolescence is very arrogant. Adolescence thinks it knows everything. Adolescence is naive and ignorant and arrogant. And we are in our ignorant, arrogant adolescence.
And now, note to self, never ask Congressman Dan Crenshaw about a congressional ban on stock trading.
Yeah, I mean, this is like number 1,000 on my priority list of things to care about. This is one of those stupid things that I've been dragged through the mud on. You know how much money I've ever had in the stock market? About $20,000. Are there a couple cases like wherein Nancy Pelosi has some very suspicious timing of her trades? Yeah. So sure, yeah, why not? Don't let us trade stocks. How about we'll just keep whipping ourselves. How about we don't make any money either? How about like just cut our paychecks? We haven't gotten a pay raise since 2008. Yeah, this is a great idea. Let's make Congress a place where only the millionaires can actually afford to do the job. This is a wonderful idea. Let's just keep doing that. Because what do the people want? Well, they want an easy button. All my problems will be solved if there's no stock trading. All my problems will be solved if there's term limits. Yeah, but if you think about any of these things for 5 whole minutes, you might quickly come to a different conclusion. Now, what I vote for? Yeah, sure. Who cares? Who cares? Like it doesn't matter to me because I don't have any money to put in the stock market.
And finally, 3 reasons why the left probably thinks a thermonuclear war might not be bad. Here's comedian Damien Rush.
3 reasons why nuclear war is actually a good thing. Number 1, nuclear war would allow us to reset our current power structures, doing away with capitalism, patriarchy, and systemic racism, and replacing them with a more equitable, progressive system that reflects the kind of people we are and the kind of world we want to build. This great reset would also include sustainability. This brings us to point number 2. Nuclear war would be brilliant for the environment. With a massively reduced human population, the carbon footprint would drop hugely, allowing the planet to thrive and nature to recover from hundreds of years of human damage. Point number 3, of course, speaks for itself. With a nuclear conflict in the next couple of weeks, this would mean Donald Trump doesn't get into office. And if you consider the amount of damage that Donald Trump will do once he gets into office, this pales in comparison to a nuclear war. We must stand with Ukraine to the bitter end, and the time has come to use nuclear weapons against Russia. If that happens, if we have a nuclear war, you might be surprised that blessings come in mysterious packages.
And that's what happened while we were away.
All right, I want to start at the back end there of Aaron's montage, because if you take out point number 3, what was his name again?
Damien Rush.
Damien Rush. All right. So props to him for that, because there are videos on TikTok that my daughter shares with me that are really not all that different from what Damien puts there, and they're unironic. Okay. But if you take away point number 3, his first 2 points are right out of the Malthusian ethic playbook. I don't know if Damien Rush is aware of this or not. I don't know his true worldview, but Malthusian ethics has really post-Darwin been the central hub of ethics for progressives. And the whole idea of scarce resources, too many people, it's what drove eugenics, it's what drove Margaret Sanger, it's what drives the climate religion we see today. This has been one of the main driving forces of the spirit of the age for going on a 3rd century in the West.
And it's amazing how it apes the gospel, how the white witch
Correct.
goes in wearing Aslan's mane.
Yes.
I mean, the true gospel has sin. Their fake gospel is sin. This is we are sinned by being mere mortals and destroying Gaia.
Yes. I mean, we can even, brother, we could do a show on this.
Sure.
So, for example, the biblical worldview is that all people are sinners and not basically good. So there is a very dim view of human nature, a very high value placed on indignant human worth just for existing, which means even when we go to punish human nature when it acts out in its worst capacities, there have to be trials, there must be witnesses, there must be evidences, because we just don't trust human nature. Okay. And so even someone accused of some of the most heinous things you could imagine is worthy of getting their day in court under a biblical worldview because of the idea that the cohabitating values of human nature is fallen, but human dignity has high worth and value, right? This inverts this. Human worth and dignity does not have high value, okay? But human nature at the same time is basically good. Right? And this is how you end up with the expert class, the special people, because they've just realized their basic goodness at a level and evolved to a plane that the rest of you plebes are either incapable of or don't even know exists. Right?
They're the Gnostics. Yes.
Correct. There's and you have to seek atonement. Right. And so I keep my carbon footprint. I recycle. But here's the thing. You seek atonement, but you never receive atonement. You have to seek it consistently, but it's never actually received. You are never forgiven. It's never good enough. Nothing's ever good enough. Can you think of a being who might create a religion where there's no act of contrition, no amount of repentance, and nothing you could do to atone for your sins that would possibly ever be good enough?
Yeah, short
no
of
matter
assisted
what you
suicide, no. Yeah.
Can you think of a being that might be interested in starting a religion that does things like that?
One does come to mind.
Indeed, one does. All right, but you're right. It's a complete and total aping, counterfeiting of the true gospel, completely, right? And so I don't know if Damien even understands fully what he's articulating there. The first two tenets of that video are not parody. They believe this. They absolutely believe that inherently. Now, would many of them that believe this on the other side believe it to the extent of that's why we need to have nuclear war? That's what the parody would be, right? Okay. All right.
But there was a video this morning of a bunch of women going out to Lake Michigan, I believe, in Wisconsin, and screaming at the ocean in rage against Donald Trump. So
I did see that before my account got hacked and shut down. That was like,
I think they were ready.
That was like the last thing I saw, actually.
Well, I think they were ready to push the nuclear button if they had one.
But many of them would not, if we're being fair. But if you took out the application of nuclear war and left everything else that Damien said there and apply it to abortion, well, that's why we have to have mass execution of children. There's too many people, don't need any more unwanted kids, too much suffering in the world. It is inherent to the worldview that we are up against, is what he said. It's not parody at all. The application is parody. Well, this is why we need to have nuclear war. But what is the premise for it, the basis for it is 100% the worldview that we are up against. And this is, again, why we are so persistent on this program about invoking the church into leading this battle, because this is a battle at a worldview and a spiritual belief system level. And even the best of political systems, best of political parties, best of political and philosophical leaders, without that understanding and that dimension of weaponry, don't ultimately stand a chance. Everything you're doing then are rearguard actions, temporary pauses and hiatuses, and the drumbeat and the movement marches on. Does that sound at all like what the culture war's been like here in the West for the last couple of decades, maybe? All right. Let me ask this. What was the point of that Kamala Harris video yesterday? Like, let me put it this way. Let me make it more specific, guys. If we put the Wonder Woman lasso of truth around Kamala and her team that produced and released and distributed that video yesterday, so we would find out what they thought, not what we think or what even we think they think, but what they actually think. Their answer would be what? What were they hoping to accomplish? And with the look of the wine mom who's a bottle and a half of Boone's Farm Inn on a Thursday before the PTA meeting, okay, self-medicating, right? And her husband's out with the his tennis instructor again this evening. I mean, that's kind of the look she has on her face, right? Okay, like she's been ridden hard and put away wet here. Okay, so what was the purpose of that? What was their purpose? What did they think that was going to accomplish?
I think it was a desperate reach to reclaim some dignity in the face of, in the last 24 to 48 hours, the story has come out about A, how deeply in debt that campaign is, and B, how it's polling. They knew all along they were losing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that joke at the beginning, I'm sober enough, but I'm drunk enough. I actually think there's some truth to that. I think that was just one. We've seen that before from total normies, how in a moment of desperation they kind of
okay. Let me go
on a drive.
Aaron, I'm going to ask you in a second, but let me go back to Todd and what you just said. If that's the case, then why not? What's with the Mike Pence, the Kamala impersonation of Mike Pence with the forlorn look and perpetual furrowed brow? I mean, what confidence does that invoke at all towards the end that you're describing?
Confidence isn't the point. Narcissism is, as it all too often is in most cases these days. She needed something for herself. I mean, she's talking about other people, but it was really for her.
So you think it's possible that maybe just her and a few people close to them did this independent, and that's all it is they just needed to vent?
I think it's like maybe her and the gal on the other end of the cell phone. Honestly, and that's it. And we're just doing this, and I need to get this.
So two wine moms, what happens to, basically this is the answer to a riddle. What happens when two wine moms read a Politico article about themselves and they don't like what it says? This video is what occurs.
Yeah.
Okay. Aaron, what do you think? What do they think they thought this was going to accomplish?
I don't know. I think it was spontaneous, maybe damage control, because all day yesterday there were Kamala campaign advisors on some podcast. I can't remember which one, but clips were coming out of that all day yesterday. Hey, why didn't you go on Joe Rogan? Well, it was really late in the game. Hey, why didn't you, pivot towards the middle? Well, we were afraid that that would actually highlight that would actually highlight how left-wing Kamala has been. Hey, why didn't you come out with the sister soldier moment on tranny rights? Well, that's just playing Donald Trump's game. Basically just saying, we ran a terrible campaign. She's a terrible candidate. We never had a chance. That's the message that was produced by her own advisors yesterday. I think this is just kind of a spontaneous damage control thing.
So you kind of agree with Todd then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are essentially, first rule of assassinations, kill the assassins, right? Okay. So you guys both believe the Democratic machine is just putting her down right now. Like I just said, ridden hard, put away wet, putting her down right now in public. And this is her emotional lament and vent in response to that spontaneously. That's kind of what you both think then.
More or less, not putting her down. Like, are any of us going to say that she's doesn't have the capacity to go back to California and run for governor? I mean, she's not like a non-entity.
Californians will elect literally salamanders if it's got a Democrat after it. But to you guys' point, you guys triggered something in me. To you guys' point, there has been a rash of polls this week. I've seen at least 3 different ones showing her either ahead in the 2028 Democrat presidential primary or the 2026 Democrat gubernatorial primary, I think it is. And so I wonder if that's the chain of events here. So we have these public polls that come out that because of name ID, she's way ahead in these primary polls, and people that were on the inside are like, we got to put this dog with fleas down right now before we get stuck with this limit again, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. So they leak all these stories that you guys are referring to. So that's an emotional response. Okay. And then this video of hers where she literally looks like, she's 6 glasses in to the, grocery store Cabernet. Okay. That's her emotional response to their emotional response.
Yes.
This is really a psychologically damaged political party, if that's all true.
Yeah. And women, and we just got done talking about women screaming at a lake. In terms of women broadly speaking, there are 2 goes at this. Hillary and Kamala, it's ended real ugly. The level of soul searching that has to happen, and the kind that you don't want to do. Nobody wants to do, male or female. Like, right. You got to go into the dark places and figure this out.
Like, has Hillary worn makeup since 2016? She's still dressing like Benny Hinn. So instead of Benny Hinn dolled up, okay, she's dressing like Benny Hinn, but now looks like a great grandmother. I mean, I don't think she's worn makeup since. It's like she's just completely just given up and just shows up like, in between a carton of Benson and Hedges to scream Russia and Trump. Okay, at whatever camera will let her do it.
No,
right.
And it's a perfect pairing. What you just described made me think of. I didn't think it was going to be a link in the story, but look what Sharon Stone's doing. 30 years ago, she's on screen taking her clothes off. We're going streaking. Let me lecture you about adolescence and being a proper grown-up.
I said 2 weeks ago on the Deace group that the left, yes, they are damaged soul and brain-wise by the scourge, by the cancer of progressivism. Yes, that is true. But they're still human beings. They're still humans. I mean, they did the upside-down demonic equivalent of two hobbits taking the ring to Mount Doom and trying to cast the ring into the fire. They tried to do that with Donald Trump. They threw everything at him. Maybe that's not the greatest analogy. They threw everything at him. And twice on Sunday. And it didn't work. It failed. How could that not be damaging to any human being? You did everything. You did your absolute darndest to get a desired outcome, which was basically trashing Donald Trump, trying to get rid of Donald Trump, and it all failed. And the country, every state moved to the right amidst all of that.
That's a key point right there.
How could that not be damaging?
Yeah. I mean, that given the level of balkanization we are at in the culture right now, short of Great Awakening level revival, having every state move to the right is probably the closest we're capable of to maybe even an Obama 08 victory, let alone a Reagan 84. Fair? I mean, it's just things are even way more balkanized than they were in 2008. Virginia was still a swing state, for example. Okay, so having every state move to the right, that's about it. Even if it's some states are trace amounts, that's the closest thing to a mandate maybe we can see in our current electoral balkanization. Fair? Yeah. Let's discuss this. I saved the best for last. The nomination of Jay Bhattacharya.
That wasn't so hard, was it? See, that's all I'm saying.
The nomination of Jay Bhattacharya to NIH in place of Francis Collins, who tried to, as Aaron pointed out, and thank you for resetting that, tried to character assassinate him. This kind of stuff, man, is biblical to me. Biblical. I mean, this is, and Haman was hanged from the same gallows he planned to hang Mordecai. This is, do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. A man will always reap what he sows. It's not just that Francis Collins was replaced by a man who followed actual science and did so bravely. But Jay Bhattacharya is also a man of faith. Jay Bhattacharya is a man of sincere Christian faith. And if you line this up, man, you line this thing up, certainly one of the most, given his scientific acclaim, one of the most feted, proclaimed evangelicals of this era in Francis Collins. And right at the moment when he is needed the most, and that faith that he says that he has, and all kinds of big evangelical, wannabe guardrails and outlook posts bestowed upon him. And instead, he betrayed the public trust, and he lied, and people died. People died because of what he did and what he said and what he didn't do and what he didn't say. And people are still dying. And then to have him replaced by someone he tried to implicate, who at the moment he was needed. Jay Bhattacharya is at one of the elite universities in the country. He's not some conservative blogger. He risked, him and Scott Atlas both from Stanford University, they risked their standing. They risked everything.
There's still fallout for Scott Atlas, too.
There is, yes. He's still facing tribunals and everything else on that campus because of what he did. To be replaced for that exact same position by the guy who did do what was right, who did run to the battle, who did draw upon his faith and his conviction for bravery. I think, again, this is indicative. This has been a spiritual battle for so long, guys. We are dealing with forces beyond natural means and processes. And to come out of this, because there are going to be days, right now, I'm the big Trump shill around here. But let's face it, there's going to be days here, probably really early next year, I would imagine, where I'm going to be like, what's he doing? Why are we doing this? What's the point to this? I don't get it. I need you guys to remind me, all right? Just like I'm going to remind everybody right now. If all you get out of your vote for Donald Trump, and you're like me, and you supported Ron DeSantis in the primary because of what happened during COVID, and all you get out of this, and that vote, is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the head of HHS and Jay Bhattacharya as the head of NIH, the two most powerful healthcare policy-making positions on this continent, on this entire continent. Maybe in the world, frankly. If that's what you got out of this, then your vote has more than paid off. At the gym this morning, I watched MSNBC do a 10-minute segment on Jay Bhattacharya, losing their mind. And of course, they just kindly forgot to keep mentioning to their audience, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, by the way, who is a tenured professor at Stanford University, one of the top 5 medical schools in the United States of American history. They kept forgetting to mention his credentials and expertise. But they were literally opening a spleen over this. If all you got out of this with those two appointments, I mean, that is incredible what Donald Trump has done here. But I also think we're dealing with forces beyond Donald Trump here. And I think we are vessels in this battle, ourselves, Trump and the like included. Because this kind of sowing and reaping playing out before us, this is let those with ears to hear, let them hear kind of stuff, guys. Todd, what do you think?
Yeah. You know, of course. And this is why you've heard me a couple times fairly recently talk about people are kind of surprised that I'm willing to offer a certain level of grace with regarding things like vaccines, etc. Just because I know the power, the crackhead power of the magical power of vaccines. It's not rhetoric. This is an idol. I understand how hard it is for people to escape a cult. That's why when you have an opportunity to do something like this, why I was very hard about the Surgeon General thing and why this is so important. It's not going to, just because they're appointed, to Steve's point, it doesn't mean that, the battle is just getting started. It's going to be hard. It's going to take work. But you have got to put this, people like me and Del Bigtree, OGs on this thing, you just have to have people that are just, we won't give up on this. We will never go away. It's not to say we don't understand it's hard. Oh, it's because we understand it's hard that we know the kind of people we have to have in power. And this is a sign of understanding of who you need. People that have the scars. They've taken the beatings and they've said, here I stand, I can do no other.
It's not just a good pick. There's nothing to bellyache here. Somebody was like, the broken clock is right twice a day when I praise this. No, it's unqualified, a righteous pick. Mm-hmm. The National Institutes of Health, what are they responsible? Grants, research, all of those types of things, millions of dollars worth. That's something that can have an overnight difference, an overnight change. And to have somebody like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya heading that up, and not only hopefully rooting out the rot, rooting out all the cockroaches from that massive consortium, that's righteous. It's okay to say so.
Amen. Amen to that. Let's start some buy, sell, or hold when we come back. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, it is time now for some buy, sell, or hold. You have submitted, per Aaron's request, your propositions that you want us to consider whether we're going to buy them, sell them, or hold on them. And yes, being that it is now the holiday season here on Thanksgiving Eve, there will be no penalties for any holding for the rest of 2024. Okay, so for the rest of 2024, we are on most wonderful time of the year forbearance. Okay, now I mean, listen, you're still going to have your inner shame mechanism as a dude kick in, and you'll just have to figure out how to resolve that internally on your own. Amen. Amen. There's going to be, you're going to feel ashamed for the fact that you chose to hold, even though there will be no external punishment. The internal browbeating, I'm sure, is something that'll have to be confronted.
In theory.
Yes. So Aaron has the propositions. You and I have not seen any of these. We're going to get through as many for the next hour as we can. And then what remains, we will deal with in the overtime today for Blaze TV subscribers. Go there, become a subscriber today. blazetv.com/Deace. You can get a discounted subscription when you go to blazetv.com/Deace. That way you won't miss today's overtime or any of the other great stuff we do every day right here at the Blaze. blazetv.com/Deace. All right, Aaron, you ready to go?
And we'll begin with uncontexted Deace 2 Electric Boogaloo with this. For those of you listening, this is why you got to watch the show sometimes. Buy, sell, and Lindsey Graham jokes.
This is incredible.
Yes.
And if I were on Twitter, I would have, if my Twitter account had not been hacked and shut down, I would have probably violated other terms of service by how many times I would have shared this. Holy cow, is that great? I mean,
epic.
even the way we are photoshopped into that poster, I mean, that is flawless.
Yeah.
I could turn that into a poster and put it in the studio somewhere. That's how good that is.
Agreed.
I mean, that is incredible. That's incredible. I'm just, wow. And of course, the movie is pretty dang good too. Okay. Oh, the scene with Steve Martin at the counter. Yes. Okay. Obviously, we can't repeat that scene, but it's an all-timer. All right. That whole movie is.
This is where, and cursing is, it's done so lazily, which I think basically is the basis. Anytime, Steve, you're warning people of a movie where there's a lot of cursing, but when it's done, and not using the Lord's name in vain, but when it's done,
to me that gets a category all by itself.
But this, a guy, Steve Martin, who's not known for like dirty comedy or anything like that, but when it's just like perfectly over the target, like that scene, just nails it.
Yeah, I mean, dude, John Candy smokes a cigarette while eating a hot dog. Is that one of the greatest acting performances of all time? You start thinking Laurence Olivier in Wuthering Heights. All right, just think of your greatest acting, Robert De Niro in Raging Bull. I mean, you've got Al Pacino in The Godfather Part 2. But here's the thing. Did they smoke a cigarette while eating a hot dog? Because John Candy pulled that off. And with aplomb, I might add. All right? Yes.
Pound for pound. And, I know that's particularly fun, but Did anybody get more out of his acting career than John Candy? I mean, that guy brought excellence over and over and over
again. And he found a way to make sure that he was the likable character. And I have no idea what he was like in his private life. I have no clue, because in every movie, he made sure he got the role every time where he was the most liked guy, like in the movie.
I've heard he's a pretty good dude.
Was he?
Yeah.
Okay. That is tremendous. I'm all the buys on that. And the rest of all y'all that have to follow that, I pity you, because that was incredible work.
When he's in, it's volunteers. When he's teaching the native Asians in what country they're in how to play poker. It is volunteers, right? Or is it stripes? I think it's volunteers.
I often get them confused myself.
And they're very grateful to John Candy for teaching them poker, and they know broken English, and he's totally reversing the rules. You see, if we lived in America, your straight would have beat my pair, but since we're here, and they're like, oh, thank you.
You know what movie I watched earlier this year that I had not seen in years? I watched all the way through. Uncle Buck.
Oh, greatness.
And I'm like, how did I forget how great this movie is, man?
Great outdoors.
Yep. How did I forget how great this movie was? Uncle Buck. Uncle Buck is a magnum opus of 80s tropes and schlocks, all brought together like a K-Tel record into a greatest hits compilation. You can't beat it, man. Love Uncle Buck.
Movies used to be a great thing.
Indeed.
Next up, Tiny Johnny, Mount Rushmore of things to be thankful for: The Last Jedi, Ohio State football, vaccines, and green bean casserole. There's 2 for each of you there.
That's... I gotta say, if you were gonna go after that, if you were gonna come after that meme, you had to go hard, right?
Yeah.
You had to go hard.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just watch the previous guy go into the lane and get his shot gets Dikembe Mutombo'd into the third deck, if you're coming in there after that, right? You better posterize somebody. It better be good, right? That's pretty good.
That was like Aragorn with a little tear in his eye looking back for Frodo and just running into death right there. That's what that was. I respect it.
That was an excellent troll. We're 2 for 2. Yeah. I'm all the buys on that as well. I can respect when I am the butt end of a great troll, and that was it.
I'm starting to feel the Christmas spirit. That's how good this has been so
I might
far.
get a tear in my eye here if this continues. Indeed. Yes.
It will not. This one is from Warm Gatorade. More serious, actually. I was laid off by 2 companies within 3 months of each other due to economic reasons. Sorry, Warm Gatorade. The Democrats trying to figure out why they lost the election while simultaneously calling voters uneducated has to be the most out of touch they've ever been. Buy, sell, or hold.
I'm a buy. You're correct. And first of all, man, I'm sorry. I have been through what you have been through. I mean, we've in the span of 1 calendar year, I worked for all 3 sports talk radio stations that have ever existed in Des Moines because I got fired or laid off. Okay. So I have been where you are at. So I'm very sorry, man. I am very sorry. But I'm also therefore maybe some encouragement that, things happen for a reason. The Lord provides, and all things work together for the glory of God and for those who love him. Okay. As to the proposition of your situation, you are correct. And I want to explain to you why this is the case. They have undergone a full worldview metamorphosis over there. And I used to say on this show a lot that a liberal is somebody who wants government to permit you to do stuff that God says is dumb and immoral. And a leftist is someone who wants government to make you do them, right? We used to say that a lot on the show. Okay. That was a statement indicative of the metamorphosis that has occurred there. And the Democratic Party is now, it's not a liberal party. It's a hard left Soviet style party. Its goal is the acquisition of as much power and control as it can muster. And so it doesn't matter who you were before you got in the way of their power and control. They won't even lie to you anymore. So you can be a hardcore feminist who thinks Title IX did not go far enough. But the minute that you complain that a 6'3" dude with an Adam's apple, but a fetish for eyeliner shows up on the other side of the net, and he is about to use all that testosterone that he still has to spike that ball right in your face and break your jaw, okay? Then you might as well name yourself, Betty Crocker, Aunt Jemima. You might as well drop out of school and declare, well, I just want to be a baby making factory for my husband with a quiver full. Because you're in the way of the agenda.
That's why Jennifer Say's coming on our show now and not The View.
Correct. You're in the way of the agenda. And you can be a guy with we used to call them unskilled workers. I think it's a terrible term, okay? But someone who works in the service industry, construction, I mean, those are jobs. I mean, I don't have the skills for those jobs. I got to pay people a lot of money out of my own pocket who do have the skills for those jobs. But you used to be the person that they tolerated, and if not mascotted, and therefore because they needed your votes, and in exchange for that, maybe gave you enough to keep your your income going. They're not doing that anymore. Those days are over now. What Sharon Stone does in that clip there, where we have the metamorphosis is now complete. If you get in the way of the agenda, it does not matter. It does not matter how loyal you were to the agenda in the past. It does not matter how much your identity was good for the agenda in the past. If you are a black male that just thinks Kamala Harris is adult, you voted for every Democrat ever, and you just couldn't bring yourself to vote for Yas Queen with a double-digit IQ, you might as well call yourself Thomas Sowell. Or better yet, you're white. If you're gay and you were there to see the Harvey Milk movie on opening night at the theater, and you are the intellectual giant of the modern gay rights movement, and your name's Andrew Sullivan, and the minute the excesses of said movement you think go too far, that you think at any point in time, some line needs to be drawn because things are getting insane, you might as well change your name to Pat Robertson. Less than a decade ago, Andrew Sullivan was still a massive figure in pop culture. Yeah, when in Superman, in Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice, they have that mock cable news panel, right? Mm-hmm. Remember, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson. You remember who the other guy is on it? It's Andrew Sullivan. Yeah, that was less than a decade ago, 2016. Andrew Sullivan today is in a ghetto. Everything that he previously did to normalize homosexuality, to redefine marriage, everything he previously did, all wiped away because he thought it was literally insane to say, and not to mention he thought it undermined the homosexual movement. If there's no gender, then what was the point of the homosexual movement then? Why'd we do any of this? See what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, he was actually being intellectually consistent in his perversion. And blazed a trail that the people that he blazed that trail for now, they have exiled him to the intellectual ghetto. Andrew Sullivan might as well be named Pat Robertson.
This is important.
Jim Dobson. Yeah. He got in the way of the agenda. The minute you get in the way of the agenda, it does not matter how much of a citizen of good standing you were before that moment. You are excommunicado. And this is, by the way, why so few people will do this. By the way, what I'm describing is a cult, just in case you were wondering. Yeah. This is why so few people, even though they will say privately, this is nuts, this is crazy, will be very hesitant to speak out because they'll be exiled. And this is where on our side, we have to be careful. We have to walk and chew gum here. There is an opportunity to welcome the Jennifer Says and RFK Jr.'s and others into our coalition. Now, at the same time, though, we shouldn't move further left to bring them in. Like what Trump, we should actually do what Trump said. RFK Jr., gotta give him the maha, gotta look at the food, but stay away from the oil, man. Need the liquid gold. See what I'm thinking? I'm gonna put him where we agree. I have no idea what Jennifer Say's thoughts are on Milton Friedman economics versus Keynesian economics. Do you know?
No.
Well, until we articulate what those are and they're in alignment with our preference for Milton Friedman's view of things, we're going to put her in the anti-censorship and freedom of expression and freedom of the ability to make a living department. That's where she belongs. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity for expansion of our tent. But we have to make sure that it is a tent this time and not a tarp. It has stakes, foundations, fundamentals. There are certain things that are unmovable. And then outside of those things, we'll be as flexible as we can. But you don't get to move those things, right? If you want, let me give you an analogy. If you want to move from California to Arizona or Texas because of what they've done to your state, we'll take you. But if you're then going to say, but I actually want lower tax cultural rot gut, get the hell out of here. Then you have to do the DeSantis approach, which is I am going to aggressively prosecute social conservatism within my government so that those people now will want to leave my state and flee. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then get out. Then we don't want you. So we have to be willing to, we have an opportunity to grow our base here in ways that it brings us some form of electoral equilibrium, if not advantage, for the foreseeable future. But we can't do that at the expense of what ultimately determines what's right and wrong in a civilization to begin with. So RFK Jr. wants to come over and find out why are there 27 ingredients in a McDonald's French fry in America, not in Canada? And why did autism go up how many thousands % since once we started mass vaccinations? Go get him, Tiger. On the other hand, all those years where he was an environmental lawyer and thought maybe it was a great idea that we maybe should have done the Green New Deal in the 70s or the 80s, we're not going to put him in charge of that, right? Correct. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, as Christians, we need to live in paradox. We need to be both Matthew 7, narrow gate, and the Great Commission in Matthew 28. And that's what Steve is describing there with people like Jennifer Say. Your language, the letter writer, when you said out of touch, that's from hell. Because not only is it from hell, it's not just by accident. When you use that phrase, I think a lot of people might say it just, they kind of drifted into this. No, it's not. It's not a glitch. It's not a bug. It's a feature.
All right, moving on. No, we don't have enough time. How about we got several submissions about different dishes for Thanksgiving. That's ahead. We also have some more political and cultural commentary ahead as well. So it's a very Thanksgiving Steve Deace show, buy, sell, or hold edition. I mean, it is quintessential this time of year Steve Deace show. I mean, we're covering all the bases. Plus, we have coming up ahead, probably in the next segment, Lindsey Graham's likely menu for Thanksgiving.
Well, Twitter's already on tilt about all this because Riley Gaines came out against mashed potatoes. I mean, I thought she was a promising young girl, with bright future, but that's just heresy.
Just watch her throw it all away.
Yeah, I know.
Right here. All right, we'll come back. Hour 2 is next. Greetings, back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzin. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Take advantage of that by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, Me, We, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X. Although I don't know if you can follow me right now because my account got hacked this morning. They're in the process of restoring it. But when it is restored, you can follow me there at Steve Deace Show. So we're not live today on Twitter, right? Because of this?
No,
yeah.
no.
You can also follow me at Steve Deace Show on TikTok and Instagram. And then if you wouldn't mind subscribing to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And that way you'll help us to grow that channel because we had to start all over again because of the censorship we were getting there. We were getting hacked by YouTube, essentially. All right, so at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you are a fan of the podcast, thank you. You can show how much you love the show by leaving us a 5-star review on the podcast platform that you prefer. And then also hit subscribe, or if you prefer iTunes, follow, because that'll assure that every time we do a new episode, it shows up in your feed every single time. At the bottom of the hour, we'll be joined by the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation himself, Daniel Horowitz. Until then, let's continue on with some buy, sell, or hold. We'll get through as many of these as we can. We're off to a pretty strong start, though. So the bar has been raised. We'll get through as many of these as we can, and then what remains, we will tackle those in the overtime today for Blaze TV subscribers. Aaron.
Joe Defiant is next. He says the postmodern attitude towards Thanksgiving, even amongst many Christians, has become massive gluttony, followed by a day of rather ungrateful behavior and commercialistic consumerism, such to the point that it's actually become far more annoying than the slightly premature celebration of the birth of the Savior of all mankind.
Yeah, buy. I mean, not. It's a general buy. I mean, not for me personally, but like, yeah. This is obviously true, but it's like most holidays, Memorial Day, what's that supposed to be about versus what it's become.
Keggers and grills, right?
Yeah.
July 4th, what's that supposed to be about, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're just narcissists. It's always about us in the thinnest possible way, and no matter what needs to be destroyed in terms of, of course you're right about that.
I will buy that this is true, but I would also caution against allowing it to solely your view of the occasion. Okay, because the point of Thanksgiving is not about those things, And I've quoted this before. I love the line in Man of Steel when Zod tries to get his old friend Jor-El to join him in a revolt against the Kryptonian Council, the High Council. And because they're both at odds for different reasons, okay, and Jor-El looks at Zod and says, "I will honor the man you once were by not joining with you in this madness." Basically, right? Okay. The traditions aren't about aren't about the things that that you talked about there, Joe. And so, I would still, there may be some of the benefits if they're taken too far. Then they become the kinds of nuisances, the public nuisances that you're describing. But people do not determine what is true. The truth does. So I wouldn't let that deter you at all from celebrating this weekend, from enjoying the time, taking the time, giving thanks. If anything, if you want to turn it to even a more solemn remembrance to counter those kinds of things, sure. I mean, I don't have a problem with that at all, but I wouldn't get all bah humbug about it, because people can be a-holes. Otherwise, you're going to be bah humbugging a lot of things that otherwise are good and decent and true.
Well, people can be a-holes, but there's just more and more people who that's their default setting, and so we don't even know what an a-hole is anymore because that's all we're surrounded by. That's the point. Like, people keep taking good things, and then instead of taking themselves and throwing themselves into that good thing, they keep taking the good thing and making it be closer to all the bells and whistles and tweaks that they want. They keep, and that turns it into an idol. And we do this not just with holidays, with a lot of things that started off good and were just fine on their own, but we wanted them more and more and more in an unnatural sense. So this is not really a Thanksgiving thing or a holiday thing you're talking about. If we want the Trump election to matter and we want America to survive, we've got to stop doing this. We've got to stop taking good things, and because that's what the devil does. He takes good things and ruining them in this self-obsessed quest. That's a very modern American thing right now. We've got to turn that around.
Okay.
All right. Caravan DLM says apple pie is better than pumpkin pie.
I'm going to sell. Both, I love both. I think it comes down to who is better, who's doing the baking, and what are they better at baking.
So I don't think that's objectively true.
Like I got this today from our old pal Paul Alexander. And a lot of you have been emailing me for the last few months. Hey, where's Paul?
We have
been trying. Paul, his career, man, is on the upswing right now, and so we have been trying to figure out times and stuff to have him come back to the Deace group, and it just hasn't worked yet. But we've been trying for the last few months. He sent me this text this morning. Hey, serious question. Given your known affinity for pumpkin spice, do you prefer pumpkin pie over sweet potato pie? The spice blend used in both are nearly identical, so it really comes down to pumpkin versus sweet potato. No, and I wasn't sure what to choose, so this kept me up last night.
Yeah, we've got a pumpkin pie versus sweet potato thing coming up.
Yeah, and I wrote back to him. Well, it depends on which you're better at making. And then he said, "That's a cop out. It's basically a hold, and now you have to have Lindsey Graham over at Thanksgiving." Yeah. So. But I would just say,
old Paul. Excellent.
If you asked me, blackberry or pumpkin pie, well, I think pumpkin's a lot better as a flavor than blackberry, so I'm going to say pumpkin. But I grew up in the state of Michigan. I love my apples. You guys know I love my pumpkin spice. So in that case, I think it really just comes down to whoever's baking, which one do they bake better, and go with that. Or, since it is Thanksgiving,
why not
to
both?
quote the great prophet, I am Iron Man. Why not both, right? Just why not both? Yeah.
All right. Moving on, Lalavis, I'm not sure how to say your name. Mount Rushmore of Trump cabinet appointees, Tom Homan, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., and Jay Bhattacharya.
I'm fine with that list. I mean, I'd probably put Pete Hegseth ahead of Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah. But I'm okay with, given the position she was appointed to, I'm okay if you want to have, I wouldn't argue with any of that.
No,
I'll buy that. Again, I'd have Hegseth ahead of Tulsi in my personal power ratings. If I had to only, with Bhattacharya now, my previous top three were RFK Jr., Tom Homan, and Pete Hegseth. If I could only do three, which one would I take? Because Bhattacharya's got to be in there. To me, RFK Jr. and Bhattacharya both have to be in there. So that leaves me with either Hegseth or Homan. That's a tough call. That's a tough call right there if I can only have three. So why don't we just, you know what? I'll just cop out. It'll be a Mount Rushmore and I get all four, right? I don't have to make that decision now. Fair?
Right.
We're good. Okay.
Okay, the sad hedgehog says macaroni and cheese is a Thanksgiving dinner dish that rightly holds its place at the table.
Well, I think macaroni and cheese is kind of a uniquely American concoction in various forms. And I mean, you can get pretty highfalutin with macaroni and cheese with, bakes and crumbs and crumb toppings and everything else and multiple cheeses. I mean, you can pull out all the stops, right? So I am totally fine with that. Totally fine with it, Todd. I'll buy.
Yeah, I won't sell on mac and cheese. And I think this is more, not in the North per se that I know of, but in the South, I think it's more of a traditional thing. I'll allow it.
Mm-hmm.
John Bielek says it's acceptable practice to replace turkey with a smoked brisket for Thanksgiving.
So no. You can have brisket also if you want to, but no. Come on. There's a historical narrative here.
Okay. All right.
This is not complicated. Let's not four-dimensional chess this thing.
All right. I was actually going to buy this because I friggin' love brisket.
I love brisket. Love brisket.
I was going to buy this. All right. But then you threw the fleece out there, Gideon, at the end with the, would you call it historical significance here? Is that what it was, right? Okay.
Yes.
Is that what you said?
But this is my point earlier about what Thanksgiving has become. Stop toying with it. It's not your toy. All right, just do the thing. Do it. Okay? Stop everything.
Not surprisingly, Todd, as our resident Catholic, is here on behalf of tradition. But in this case, I think I agree. As much as I love me some brisket, you can have that at any time. You can even serve it with it if you want. I mean, if you're smoking brisket, you got to probably have room to smoke some turkey, right? Put that in there, okay? And I was going to buy this until you got me at the end. Gideon threw out the fleece there at the end with the historical significance, and is the guy that wrote the Why Thanksgiving children's book.
Yes.
I'm aware of that, okay? And so, yes, then. I think you do have to serve a turkey. I do.
The holidays that are about all of us are not the prime opportunity to celebrate your idols. Stop it.
Again, if you want to serve both, that's fine too. But there's got to be a turkey. Man, there's got to be. It's quintessential. Right? So instead of, it's Thanksgiving. Why not just, and also, Tony Stark. Just do both, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, next we go to Bama Conservative with this tweet from or X post from John Rich. Maybe Trump is nominating people who have worked with the enemy because they know where the bones are buried. Buy, sell, or hold.
So don't overthink. Keep it simple.
I think it's entirely possible. I think it's entirely possible that it's not. I think it's entirely possible that some things are about principle and some things are about access and some things are about I owe somebody a favor and they owe me. I just think human nature is complicated. So I think it's possible RFK Jr. and Jay Bhattacharya were chosen because they know those things too, or just simply because they were, in RFK Jr.'s case, loyal to Trump. In the other case, he saw Jay. I don't know. I've not had a meaningful conversation with Donald Trump guys in 9 years. Okay, so I can't sit there and psychoanalyze and know motivations or anything for sure. I do think this is a legit possibility on some degree. I wouldn't use it as a panacea to excuse everything you don't agree with, but they clearly have some plan. They clearly have learned some lessons from what went wrong before. We noted this ourselves. Kevin Roberts from Heritage was on here saying the same thing yesterday, right? Okay, so I wouldn't just throw this out there as some kind of grifty talking point. And I've seen John be critical at times with things with Trump that he didn't like. So I'm not accusing him of that. Okay. But I wouldn't just put this out as some grifty talking point every time Trump does something that has a scratch and whatever hairs left on the top of our heads. Okay. But I also wouldn't just uniformly rule it out either. So I'll buy. I think with Trump, let me quote from you something a little birdie who is very well known and very close to Trump told me after the convention this summer. Trump is very complicated. Indeed. So I think sometimes this could be it. Sometimes it's not. And sometimes it's not. And sometimes it is.
All right, moving on. Buy, sell, or hold. This exchange on the buy, sell, or hold thread escalated quickly. Sam Adams says, abandoning turkey for meats such as brisket and ham is un-American hippie nonsense, and anyone suggesting the switch deserves jail time. Rebecca Pickens replied and said, to disagree, I'm having ribeye. Turkey is a tasteless meat that has to be doctored up in all sorts of ways to make it even moderately tasty. I don't have to do anything to make my ribeye to the best thing I will ever eat. Just saying. Sam responded to her saying, it ain't the bird's fault. You don't know how to cook it.
Oh, snap.
Buy, sell, or hold. That
Sam
escalated.
Off the top.
That escalated quickly.
Whoa.
You know, my heart's with Sam and Rebecca. I'm afraid you seem like a nice lady, but prepare for Tom Homan to deport you. That's all I'm saying.
Prepare for deportation. I'm assuming these are embellishments, which is fine. Okay, in terms of the tenor, if not the premise, right? Okay. I'm going to go back and whichever side resets what I just said, which is you have to cook the turkey if you're having Thanksgiving dinner. And you can have anything else with it you want, but that's part of it. If you went to somebody's house and they had stockings up for Christmas and they had presents, right? Okay. And there were lights on the house, but they were like, well, we don't want to have a Christmas tree because it just takes up a big amount of space. You'd look at them weird, right? You'd be like, you don't have a tree. You just have a pile of presents on the floor where there's no tree. Right. There are just certain things that are inherent to the occasion. Okay. And if you know the Thanksgiving story, okay, turkey is part of it. So I just think you should honor that. I agree. Even if you don't want to eat it, you don't like it, somebody else wants to eat it. Because it is not an easy food. Like if you know anything at all about cooking a burger and just put salt and pepper on it, it's just tasty in and of itself. And then whatever more you know to do from that baseline forward and the quality of the cut of the beef in and of itself determines just how good and great it can really be. Fair? Okay. Turkey is not a plug and play meat. She's right about that. It is not something that just instantly people are like, I've got a craving for a turkey. Okay. In May. Okay. So, it is something that does require a level of treatment that a lot of other tastier meats don't. She's right about that. Okay. Nevertheless, though, even though she's correct about that, the occasion calls for the acknowledgement of the turkey as part of the tradition.
Yeah, I don't get the people who whole cloth just hate turkey, just whole cloth. I mean, it's never good, really. You go to the state fairs or the county fairs, right? Universal, you get the turkey leg. That's not good. That's the best meat there is, a turkey leg at a state fair, a giant turkey leg. I mean, that's the That is the quintessential meat delivery system right there.
You can brine it, you can deep fry it, you can go Cajun on it. Come on, try harder.
Meh in the USA says the real replacement theory is moderate Democrats have taken control over the Republican Party.
Well,
So this is just, can we not today?
I can't. I mean,
just so dumb.
Was Mitch McConnell already a senator from Kentucky? Was Tom Tillis already a senator from North Carolina?
Yeah,
was John Cornyn already a senator from Texas?
In 2016.
I assume this is about Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. They're actually to the right of everybody I just mentioned on numerous issues, by the way. Okay. I mean, I don't understand. I really don't. I don't. I don't understand what political party you thought you were in prior to this. But here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it for you next week. It's better to give than to receive. So I'm going to give you a proposition next week, right? Just to kick off the official Christmas season that Erzin won't beat me up for acknowledging now. Next week, I'm going to walk through and I'm going to point out how on every single issue the Republican Party is to the right of where it was when my full-time career in politics began 18 years ago. 18 and a half years ago now. And I'm going to be right. But I'm going to be right for you. I'm going to do it for you. It's a service to America, and it's my Christmas gift to the country. I don't understand what party some of you thought you were in all these years. I truly don't. I don't, and I wonder if some of you literally just started listening to me like 10 minutes ago. I mean, guys, there's a book over here on the shelf called Truth Bombs. So. At this point in time, I wasn't sure if the show was going to survive. I didn't know about the merger with CRTV and the Blaze yet. And so my old contract was coming to an end. So I kind of wrote a book if I was going to get out of politics and do something else for a living. That was going to kind of be, my goodbye letter. And then there's another book up here on the shelf called Rules for Patriots. That's my first wide release book, endorsed by Donald Trump, by the way. And in both of these books, I point out how the Republican Party, the red state Republican Party, just sucks and is basically a bunch of liberals, and give names and records and data. Point out that Bill Clinton's second term in office was way to the right of George W. Bush's second term in office. These are all things that I either said or wrote before Trump ever became president or were aside from him becoming president. I truly don't understand what country a lot of you thought you were in. I'm sorry, what party you thought you were in all this time. I really don't. And I mean it sincerely. I'm not trying to be snotty. The only thing I can come up with is what I said yesterday. Some of you just would prefer the talking points of a platform to give yourself some self-righteous superiority, and then they did nothing on them. But listen, I'd vote for Tulsi Gabbard over Tom Tillis and John Cornyn, and I would vote for Tulsi Gabbard over at least, just without even giving names, at least 25 Republican senators right now. I'd vote for RFK Jr. maybe even over more than that right now.
Yeah, well, we all know, I believe faith without works is dead. So the hard work is just beginning. But in terms of the faith being set out, the platform and the people right now, this is the most conservative platform in our lifetime, including Reagan. Getting rid of the Department of Education, mass deportations, cleaning up like
this is what I was just about to say.
Okay, go.
We just had this conversation, was it yesterday or the day before? This is not an ideological party. It's a coalition party. That's absolutely true. It's far more in ideological alignment with people like you and me than a Dan Crenshaw Republican Party or a Mitt Romney or John McCain Republican Party. It is far more in ideological alignment, despite the fact that it is a coalition-based party. I don't think that's up for debate. And that was the Republican Party of 20 years ago. It is, as Steve is saying, next week, it's far to the right of where we have been and where we would have been for sure. Sorry, I didn't want to step on you, Todd.
No, you obviously, you and I are feeling the same thing. There's a level of possibility that's out there if it's not acted upon, that'll be a grotesque act of failure and cowardice, quite frankly. But in terms of drawing the lines in the sands right now, I mean, honestly, if you'd go back and set out what Reagan planned to do in both his first and second terms, I'd like to line whatever those talking points were right out of the gate. Man, I mean, I doubt they were this ambitious.
Let me just give a preview of next week. Let's look at the issue. I'm going to make the case right now. The Republican Party is more to the right on gay marriage than it was when I started doing this 18 and a half years ago. And I was involved in fights to pass marriage amendments all over the country. So let me just make that case right now. Well, Steve, how can you say that? Trump is openly for gay marriage. Well, so were Mitt Romney and John McCain. They were too. You want to know what the issue was? There were two reasons that John McCain formed gangs to oppose George W. Bush. One of them was to stop the fast tracking of Bush judicial appointees. And the other was a constitutional amendment to define marriage. So John McCain and Mitt Romney were both for gay marriage too, just like Trump. But Trump has actually done way more to defend the religious freedoms of those who don't agree with it. What did Mitt Romney do? Mitt Romney shut down Catholic charities because they didn't want to do gay adoptions. That's what he did. After the Goodrich decision in Massachusetts, that's what he did. And that was 20 years ago. Now, did I sit here and say that the Trump Republican Party or the Romney-McCain Republican Party, it has my view of what the law should be on so-called gay marriage? Is that what I said? No. Did I say, though, that Trump, that currently we are further to the right on the issue than we were 18 years ago? Yeah. Yeah, we are. 18 years ago, we nominated the guy who invented gay marriage, gave it to the entire country, and then also would violate religious freedom to do so. Now, we have a guy who's a staunch defender of religious freedom. We've definitely moved right. Here's what you don't have. You don't have your fake talking point in the platform anymore. You don't have that. You don't have that. I admit, you're right. You don't have the fake talking point that you can send around and get self-righteous about and feel better about. And that, no, you're the high and mighty people. I admit you don't have that anymore. You're right about that. But since faith without works is dead, when you look at the actual works on the issue, Trump is to the right. And this era is to the right. Not to mention, guys, broadly on issues of sexual ethics, dude, the language that we are using right now in the entire ecosystem of the right, when I said stuff like this 18 years ago, I was going to get everybody fired. This was extreme. This was radical. This is just our baseline conversation now. To me, it's not even close that we've moved right on the issue of gay marriage. In fact, the Gallup poll this past year showed, for the first time since about 2012, support for gay marriage amongst Republicans dropped. I'm going to be right, and you're going to be wrong. But I'm not going to do it to gloat. Well, it might be a little gloating. I'm going to mainly do it, though, as a public service to you, in the hopes that you can just give up your bitterness. You can look at the appointment of Jay Bhattacharya today, and instead of saying, well, nothing good comes from Nazareth, thank the guy who gave you the power, that you gave the power to, for empowering that appointment. You could do that. Or you can just go ahead and wallow in self-righteousness behind an anonymous screen name on X. It's your call.
Next is Jeremy LaForce. Christmas music during Thanksgiving dinner is a must.
I'm not going to say it's a must. I mean, to me, I think Christmas music, whenever you want it, is fine. But it kind of goes against it to say it's a must. That's really not the point of Christmas. It's kind of okay. All right. So I'm going to say sell. But I'm fine with it, of course, if you want to. In fact, I'd probably want to go to your home. But no, I'm going to sell going too far to say it's a must. It's
not a must. It is fine. But no, not any time. Like in June? No. Don't do that. That's deranged.
I think there's sometimes you need a little Christmas right now. I do. I think there's sometimes. I do. And there's sometimes you could be down and out, and you could you just need that love and feeling, man. I think I can see it. And or a loved one passes away and the earlier parts of the year, and Christmas was the time of year that you have the greatest memories of them, and you want to bond and share that. I think that's all good, man. I think that's all good.
No.
Yes. But still on this.
Ziggy Eric says Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the best Thanksgiving movie of all time.
I don't think there's a long lexicon of Thanksgiving films, but here, let me look this up. Greatest.
You know what I realized the other day? Silence of the Lambs is a Thanksgiving movie.
It is. I just watched it earlier this year for this movie book that Amy and I are going through. Miracle on 34th Street is also a Thanksgiving movie. The Big Chill is considered a Thanksgiving movie. Charlie Brown Thanksgiving is not a movie. It's a television special. Scent of a Woman is considered a Thanksgiving film, I guess.
Well, that's a great.
That is a great movie.
Great movie. The
rest of these films are not, frankly, all that inspiring. So if we want to say the two greatest Thanksgiving films are Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Miracle on 34th Street,
sure.
I'm down with that.
Yep.
You bet. Yep.
Next is Hide, Protect Your Kids from Evil, who says Mount Rushmore of normie behaviors that are the greatest menace to society. Men who pee in porta potties with the seat down, people who recline their airline seats, people who don't put their shopping carts away, people who watch videos on their phone in public spaces without headphones.
So that's a weird
I agree with all of those except the last one. I forgot my headphones on a recent airport trip, and I tried to sit in the corner, on a not a delay, but waiting a layover, and I tried to sit in the corner of the airport by myself, and I tried to watch the Michigan basketball game a couple weeks ago on the quietest volume I could, but I violated that. I did, and I'm ashamed. So I can't be a hypocrite. I will sell.
Next up, Elliot, and let's do this one. Let's end with this one. Steve would eat an entire casserole dish of delicious green bean casserole if it guaranteed a Lions Super Bowl win.
Buy. 100%. I mean, I would inject it intravenously into my rectum. 100%. Buy. Yes.
God. Sell every part of that last 30 seconds of television.
We're saving the Lindsey Graham Thanksgiving menu for overtime. That's probably a good thing.
Now, if there was ever a reason to subscribe,
I don't think you
Blaze
could get
TV,
it down. I don't think you could get the green bean casserole down.
I would do whatever I had to do. Whatever I had to do.
Witchcraft!
For that trade, buy. 100%. All right, Daniel Horowitz is next. Well, we've had a lot of fun on the show today, but all good things, Jean-Luc, must come to an end. We could not possibly say and bid adieu for a long holiday weekend without a few gut punches. Just makes you feel more alive. And for that, we bring on our good friend, the prophet of woe and lamentation himself, Daniel Horowitz. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Hey, Steve, you're the one with the hacked Twitter account. I'm in a pretty good mood.
That's true. I posting who knows what in my name because I can't get on. But yeah, they are trying to deal with that, by the way. So hopefully it'll get taken care of later today. But let's go to the news that came last night, and that's the appointment of Jay Bhattacharya for the position of Francis Collins as the head of NIH. Man, this is, to me, I quoted this scripture earlier in the show about this, Daniel, and Haman was hung from the same gallows that he intended to hang Mordecai. Yep. I mean, this is incredible. I mean, these are both men purporting to be Christians, and at the moment of the truest public test of their faith, you saw Francis Collins go somewhere from just fall apart to absolute simp, lying propagandist for the scamdemic and the spirit of the age. And you saw Jay Bhattacharya in his own very reserved way come forward and risk it all as one of the first academics of any repute whatsoever to step forward and confront what was being done to the whole world. And for them now to switch places and for him to be given that position, it's an incredible appointment by Donald Trump. We should all thank him, of course. But I also think this is indicative that a further confirmation, all of us, whether it's an ideologue like you, whether it's the president of the United States, whether it's a guy who, drywalls for a living and they're listening to you and I on a podcast to get through the day, all of us in the end are mere vessels for more cosmic forces. And I think this is further confirmation of that as well.
And Steve, this is why you always have to build an affirmatively just and righteous movement, because you never know when things could turn on a dime, and you don't have to settle for the lesser of two evils, and you actually get affirmative good. And for a number of years, it looked like we weren't going to get our reckoning. We weren't going to get anything with this. We weren't even, when Republicans took over Congress, we got jack squat. We didn't even get the ability to have some sort of influence on where they were going to head. And now you're going to have, look, Dr. J got his start on this program. I don't know if people remember that. It was this program where he began. Then I had him on my show. Eventually, he started to go on Fox and Tucker and some of these other shows. But he actually got started at the Blaze in terms of his media exposure. And to watch a guy like that become head of NIH, there's two thoughts that come to mind, and one policy and one political. At a policy level, this is a pro-life pick. Now, I want people to understand this. Being pro-life is whole life from conception until natural death. And what NIH does in particular is it funds research on treatment, whatever the ailment is. We got to become intimately acquainted with it for a bad way during COVID, for COVID treatment. But we have so many vexing ailments that are now taking people down at a younger age than before. Life expectancy is going backwards. He has the ability to steer that funding away from the cartel towards a lot of these innovative ideas from all these doctors that we were thinking, where do we get the money from? How do you study an ivermectin mebendazole protocol for cancer?
Mm-hmm.
There's some promising signs. We know it certainly doesn't cause side effects, so you may as well try it. Where do we get the money from? This is where it's at. So it's not just about COVID justice. It's prospectively about all these vexing ideas. And then you read these, doctors that are saying, hey, there's these cheap alternatives. You might want to look at it. And they can never see the light of day. That's what NIH in particular is important. The political point I would make about this is the triumph of coalition government. This is the most important affirmation of everything I've been driving for my entire career. A lot of people might say it's a rejection of what I was saying. Well, Daniel, what do you mean? You were wrong about Trump. Well, how did we go from our biggest concern about Trump being what is appearing to be our best benefit, our most auspicious possible policy outcome? Because there's other things I'm very concerned about. I'm the most bullish on healthcare. Why? Because we challenged him. Because the movement made clear that there is a significant number of people behind that one issue, and they didn't fall in line. And you know what would have happened had RFK, stayed in the race? The margin, Trump won decisively, given that we're a close country, but it's still close.
Mm-hmm.
He would have likely lost.
Mm-hmm.
And to RFK's credit and the movement's credit, they were willing to run against Trump. To Trump's credit, he was willing to ensure that he himself doesn't lose, and rather than saying you're giving it to the Democrats. Well, if you don't want the Democrats to win, you come to the third party guy and say, hey, what do you want? And he's like, well, I want my issue. All right. Well, you support me. I'll be present. You get your issue. And that appears to be what's happening. We need to harness this and copy and paste it for governor's races. When you have these crappy governors, picture like a Joni Ernst, but for governor, okay? Or like a Terry Branstad type of guy running in Iowa. Oh, well, Steve, it is what it is. What are you going to do? Better than the Democrat? No, run third party. Oh, but the Democrat might win. Well, if you're worried about that, it's your job to come to us. And I want to make sure we don't forget how we got here.
It's funny you would mention that. Because now that it's been almost 15 years, let me tell you a little behind the scenes story of one of the reasons we were able to topple those justices in the state of Iowa. We became the first state in the history of the country to take out justices by popular referendum, not via an election, but a retention vote, and not because of malfeasance, but because of their judicial opinion. What we did is I leaked to people I know on the other side that I had some contacts with from my sports talk radio days that were prominent Democrats that I knew from the sports world. I leaked to them that Bob Vander Plaats was considering challenging Terry Branstad third party. He did not like the fact of what happened in this primary, that Branstad basically came out of retirement with Bob way ahead in the polls just to stop him. And the way that this entire thing was conducted and everything else, and the fake register poll that had him losing by 30 points, and he almost won the nomination after that. Before Ann Seltzer did this to Donald Trump in Iowa, she did it to us in Bob's gubernatorial election. Okay, you've been in enough primaries to know when the major newspaper runs a poll saying the guy is going to lose 2 days before the primary, is going to lose by 30 points, Daniel, how much that does to depress a turnout. Okay, and we darn near won that primary. We might have won it without that poll from Seltzer. And so we wanted to go after the justices, but we had no money. Everybody thought there's nothing to invest in there. It can't possibly work. It wouldn't be successful. It's never been done.
Never been done.
People won't turn the ballot over to vote no. Okay, those are all the objections we heard. So we came up with the idea of let's leak. You know, Bob leaked to some of his people. I leaked to contacts that I had. We leaked that Bob was planning a third-party run for governor to challenge Branstad as a spoiler. And Newt Gingrich, this is one of the main reasons why I endorsed Newt in the presidential caucus, because we would not have beaten, let me tell you the truth here too, as much credit as people like Bob and I get for that historic election, without Newt Gingrich, we don't win that. We don't. Here's why. Because Newt was willing to do us a favor. Newt went to Haley Barbour at the RGA, who was running the Republican Governors Association, and said, I don't know, these Iowans are just that crazy. I mean, look, they voted for Huckabee. Okay. You know, I mean, look what happened. They voted for Pat Robertson in the past. I think you guys are underestimating. They're really ticked off about what y'all pulled here, dragging Branstad out of mothballs, out of retirement to run. I think they might actually do it. So out of that, they hooked us up with the donor network so that we could get the seed money, so that we were on the air challenging those justices by Labor Day on television statewide. Before we had an office, before we had a letterhead, Daniel, we're running television commercials statewide in Iowa, going after those justices and naming them to put that's how you know. That's when people start taking your insurgency seriously, is when you're up on the air, right? Okay? And so before we had an organization, before we were on the ground, before we had signs for yards, we were on statewide television because we used that leverage to get hooked into the RGA donor network, to get the funding that we needed to get on the air and send a message right away that we're serious about that. If Newt does not do that for us, if he does not deliver that message for us, we don't probably, I'm confident we don't win that, because we're stillborn, right? We don't ever get off we don't ever take off from the landing strip. So I've lived through some of what you are describing. I've lived through that.
No, and I think that's very instructive to where we go in the future. Often we'll have one or two big issues. That was the gay marriage, judicial supremacy issue there. And the establishment Republicans do not want to deal with it. So we make them deal with it. I am sick and tired of hearing, shut up, you got to support the Republican. Like, no, you got to support the Republican values. It's your job to come to us. Now, look, you and I both know the reason why it came together here was because RFK was a unique moment where there was a merging and shifting of coalition. So you had a whole cadre of people that really weren't traditional Republicans, but they were more inclined to vote for Trump given the realignment. But with RFK there pummeling him on this issue, then they would vote for him. So you had that leverage. The problem is in the Republican Party, they know that Republicans are a bunch of pathetic losers. Like, oh, they always have to support the no. You need to act like RFK. I mean, learn from him. And it's time we do that. You got like Brad Little, this Chicken Little guy wants to run for Idaho governor, and for a third term. We need to make it clear that's unacceptable. So we're going to have a primary, but you know what they do in primaries. They have more money in name ID. They lie about who they are.
Yep.
And if they win, we need to make it clear we're not dealing with it. And often I used to make the argument that let's do it where it's not likely that it will tip it to the Democrats, right? Because sometimes if it's an overwhelmingly red state, no matter what, the Democrats don't have enough of a floor of support to win a three-way race. What I'm saying now is to particularly do it where it would make the difference in the election. Let them come to us. I mean, at some point, you got to do that. So for all those saying, oh, you were wrong about Trump, well, no, I mean, we actually had the right tactic, and now it's time to take yes for an answer, but certainly to learn from it as well.
The one issue, and I did not anticipate this is what we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about today, but I think it's a fascinating angle. The one problem I think that we do have pursuing this is I do think that Trump is earnestly transactional.
Yes.
He is a businessman, okay? And he was earnestly transactional with the evangelicals in 2016, right? And gave and delivered on almost everything that the judges they wanted, the overturning of Roe, okay? And then, of course, evangelicals showed they don't have a clue when they got what they wanted, but that's another story, okay? But I do think many of the Republicans that you're describing are not earnestly transactional. And I do think that many of these kinds of Republicans, like Tom Tillis in North Carolina, who's dreadful, for example, I think they represent a wing of this party that would rather lose elections than lose control of the process to people like us. And that's the one fly in the ointment of this, is you can't negotiate with someone who's not open for business. Donald Trump, right and wrong, is pretty much always open for business. He'll always take the call, right? He from the time his daddy gave him $1 million out of the Wharton School of Business, he's been wildcatting. He's always looking for the next angle, okay? These guys are globalist corporatist whores. They're not, and I think in many cases, they're probably not open for business. They would just as soon wreck us and have the Democrat in that seat than give us what we want. I'll give you the final word to respond to that.
So I think this is more appropriate for governor than senator in general. You're making a very valid point. I would say the party in totality would not be able to sustain it. Just the RNC, NRSC, RGA leaders, if we actually were serious. I don't think we've ever been serious about it. So therein lies the problem. But for example, like I'll tell you, as Trump's appointing RFK, the South Carolina governor is appointing as health director a mask Fauci type of guy. So
in South Carolina. In South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina. So this is the type of thing that we need to do, where we would say, hey, we want the director of Department of Health, in our portfolio. I think it's easier to do that for governor. Now, just going back to the fundamentals, I think this is what you are seeing with Trump. Trump is transactional, where you can get better than you'll ever get in the party, but you also have a looming risk of, worse than you've ever had. And I think, we probably don't have enough time to get to this, but if you take the cabinet in totality, I think you see that. You see coalition government, for better or for worse. We got it with our medical freedom movement. You have some of these other sort of like the labor pick, this Chavez Dreamer person, that part of the coalition. And the challenge for us is going to be to strengthen the hands of our members of the coalition against the people we don't like.
Fascinating conversation for sure, brother. I appreciate it. Appreciate you, all you've done this year, and hope you and your family have a great Thanksgiving, okay?
You as well. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, brother.
See you on the other side.
You bet. All right, what do you guys think?
What he was just describing there is why so far the appointments of Donald Trump seem as if you're viewing this from an ideological perspective, it seems as if it's like the fusion of DeSantian Florida. We're going to create consensus by solid governance and populism. That's like it's the fusion of those two things together. That's why we have a Jay Bhattacharya and the labor secretary, whose name I can't remember. That's why you have an RFK Jr. and you have Dr. Jeanette as a Surgeon General. It's these things. It's, oh man, I broke a clock right twice a day, and he has no idea. He's dripping over. No, it's just it. This is the world in which we live now. It is very much coalition driven. It's very much what you were just talking about. There's very much transactionalism going on here. That can be a great boon. It can be a great cause for fretting and concern at the same time. That's why, again, last night was maybe the prime case why you just can't You can't rip open your spleen with every single move that he makes. You're going to drive yourself crazy over the next 4 years.
And look silly soon after, one way or the other. Yes. Todd.
If we want to get to where we want to go as a nation, which in many ways is to go back, those kind of conversations between guys like those two, and where Steve said, this is not quite where I thought this was going to go, but let's follow this through. You got to have that courage instead of the petty, nonsensical hills to die on that we laid out in the previous segment with a non-con. Get in the fight. None of us are absolutely certain how we're going to get to where we need to go, but we need to go there. We need to not stop trying. It's our destiny as a nation, and in many ways, it's a destiny as our people of God, the good, the true, and the beautiful. What are you prepared to do?
Amen. Well, hopefully you're prepared to enjoy your Thanksgiving weekend. It has been quite the year, and I think all of us in this ecosystem of patriots could use a break. So enjoy it, take it, and enjoy your families and your loved ones as well. We appreciate all of you, too. We're going to stick around, do overtime for subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you Monday. Until then, Romans 8:28.